All right, everybody, welcome to today's video. And today I'm super excited to bring you a overview of a collection of a very good friend of mine and some of the amazing cars that they have in their collection here. I can't thank them enough for giving me the opportunity to bring these cars to all of you out there and share with you what an amazing set of cars are here. I am behind me, in case you haven't been able to identify them yet, is the holy trinity of Mopars: a 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible, a 1970 Hemi Challenger convertible, and a 1970 Hemi Cuda convertible. And the cars here are just amazing. They're incredibly historic, and I can't wait to share each and every one of them with you. And let's go ahead and take an overview. It's not just Mopars in here. There's some amazing GM products, as well as a couple of amazing Fords, like a couple of Cobras, as well as one of 8 '69 Trans Am convertibles, and a couple of Judge Ram Air 4 4-speed convertibles as well. So let's give a quick tour, and then we'll go ahead and sit down with the owners and show you some more of these amazing cars. So Wade, thanks for having me out here.
Thank you, John.
I really appreciate this opportunity to share these amazing cars that you've collected over the years with my viewers and the automotive community.
My pleasure.
You truly have one of the most remarkable collections of muscle cars, especially, of course, the Hemi Cudas. It's truly impressive. I've seen a lot of collections over the years, been to a lot of museums, and these are truly historic cars.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
Again, I appreciate the opportunity, and so today I'd like to give an overview for the viewers out there and just have a quick conversation with you and discuss where your passion came from, how the collection has grown over time, and some of your favorite vehicles of the collection.
Oh, that might be a tough one. Sure. Yeah, I'm probably like all your viewers. I mean, I just really gravitated towards muscle cars. I grew up in a small town, and those were the cars that were really common and prevalent, cruising around the neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. Of course, I drove my little powder blue Volkswagen because my grandfather had a Volkswagen dealership in Napa, and that was the family-run dealership, and mm-hmm. So everybody had Volkswagens and drove Volkswagens, but I always strived to have that more. Mm-hmm. As a young age, I heard these powerful cars start up, and that rumble in your chest, and that sensation, and the visceral feel, it smells, and I just really appreciated it. So I knew as soon as I had an opportunity to get beyond the Volkswagen phase of my mm-hmm. life, which was really enjoyable, but I needed something with a little more power. So I just read books and read magazines, and I never really thought I would own anything in particular. I just really aspired to all these great cars that existed, and wanted to be a part of that in a small part. And I got my first Challenger and dug my parents' old Ranchero out of the field and put a 351 Cleveland in it. So I did my own little parts for that. But it wasn't until, say, the late 1990s when my fledgling little high-tech company started to become successful that's when I could actually start thinking about perhaps actually owning some of these really rare cars mm-hmm. that I had lusted after for so long through the magazines and stuff like that. And the good thing is, by that point, I gained some practical experience. I had built some of these cars myself. I knew I knew them and I had read a lot of information and I was very studious in that. So I went into the purchasing phase of the hobby with some background experiences and getting my hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a good time, and that 2000 era was a very exciting time for muscle cars. The cars were really increasing in value rapidly.
They were, yeah.
And it was just, there was a lot of appreciation for them at the time, and it was very difficult for a newbie like myself to break into that at inner circle, if you will, and try to be able to buy some of these cars. It seemed by that point that the car hobby, although it was very exciting, it was really, there was a fairly small group of people where these cars would generally gravitate towards.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to work hard to become part of that group and get access to these cars that were starting to become available, simply because the prices were going up so high. Mm-hmm. They were finally trading hands when they had so rarely done so prior to that.
Right. And it's interesting, you'd mentioned that about the Volkswagen that's sitting in the back. One thing that is truly unique about you and your car collection is you've never sold a car, correct?
That is a fact. Yeah. A couple things, my dad just passed away. He kind of forged in my brain stock cars that left in stock configuration would always be more valuable and interesting and appreciated than customized cars. That was his mentality, and that really swayed me. So at any point that I wanted to even put a stereo in, the stupid little AM Sapphire Volkswagen stereo, every time I wanted to put a stereo in, just be careful, don't cut anything, don't modify anything, that really stayed true to heart. And then he also talked about, like, he had a Triumph TR2, and he had an old Harley Davidson motorcycle, and he always regretted these cars or automobiles that he had and had to sell. And I didn't have much money or anything like that, or space. It just that really kind of was a sounding point to me, and I never ever wanted to feel that regret. And so I just kind of committed to myself that if I didn't have to, I wasn't going to sell anything. Yeah. And there were many points in my life where that became quite an issue, like having a small apartment and having 5 cars, that are up on blocks around it, because not all of them were, that pretty.
Right.
So, but they were all sentimental to me. When I bought them or received them or whatever, they all meant something really important to me at the time, and they became part of me. And I just decided early on that if I didn't have to sell anything, I wouldn't. And to this date, I have not sold a single car ever in my life. And also the way that tunes my appreciation towards the cars that I go after is that, at an early stage, it was just anything was interesting. But when I started the collector phase of this hobby in my life here, I was really focused on cars that I was absolutely certain I would want to keep forever, because it had to be, I couldn't just buy a cheap car. I had to do my research and know that this was worthy of being something that was going to be part of my life for as long as my life was around. So that really tuned my thinking towards building my collection with what I thought was cars that deserved to be under the Ogle name, if you would.
That's truly amazing. For myself, there are definitely a few cars that I've had over the years that I've regrettably sold, but hopefully we'll be at a point now where I'm no longer in a situation where I have to sell any cars, because I'm, in particular, the 71 Cuda that we did back in 2006, 2007, that one, of course, we would love to have back. My wife...
I wish I would have seen that car in person. I've seen pictures of it. It looks beautiful. You did an awesome job.
Thanks. It was quite the undertaking. It was my second full restoration on an e-body. My 72 Challenger that I still have, which was my first car. That one was my first e-body, but the 71 Cuda, and then of course my wife and I learned a very valuable lesson on that car. Not painting one the color that you love, because it makes it that much harder to sell. Which is why the 70 that we did turned out sublime green, because we knew we wouldn't have that attachment.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you put in a lot of effort in that. I mean, it showed that was really, well, I mean, everything you do is really upper echelon. So you do just fantastic work. So I can understand how hard it would be, but I'm sure it went to a good home and you ended up doing something worthwhile with the proceeds.
We did. We built the sublime green car from that, and the car went to Vegas. As the last I heard, it was in the gentleman's collection down there. The 70, it changed hands a couple of times. It went to Colorado, I believe, it was originally, and then back east. So yeah, that one's been a little more traveled. So most of your cars, though, I've started with the 71 Cudas, correct?
When I was growing up, the streets were littered maybe is not an endearing term, but littered with first generation Camaros and Firebirds. Mm-hmm. And while I really appreciated those cars, they were so commonplace that I wasn't really that excited about owning them, just because they seemed like they were ubiquitous. I don't know. So I had a tough time with gravitating towards those. Mm-hmm. Then I saw, I don't even remember when I was a teenager. I think I saw a picture of a 70 Challenger. And probably like everybody, I mean, you mistake it for something else first, but I'm like, no, that's not a Camaro. That's not a Mustang. And wow, that's cool. So I really liked 70 Challenger, and I just swore to myself that as soon as I got any space and any money right out of college, I was gonna get a Challenger. And then similarly, I remember I was crossing. I was in my bug. We're going to. I was in high school. We're going to some show in San Francisco. We're crossing the Bay Bridge. Mm-hmm. Crossing the Bay Bridge, and there's this car rumbling up behind me, crossing the Bay Bridge, and it's got these weird orange glow driving lights in the upper part of the grille. And I prided myself by that point, probably like you and everybody else as a kid, you'd see headlights coming at you and you could recognize exactly what that car. Yeah. I don't know that that's a feature anybody can do anymore these days, but back then that was something you prided yourself on being able to recognize. Definitely. By its headlight pattern. Oh, I know that. I know what that car is. Yep. And then you could, you immediately find out if you were right or not. Oh, okay, and then learn. I did not know what this car was with these dual headlights out there and these orange upper driving lights. And then it passed me. It was a Cuda, 70 Cuda. I'm like, whoa, that is cool. And again, it was the same thrill I got from the Camaros and Firebirds around there, but it was just something I just hadn't seen before. So I really kind of, at that age, I really kind of aspired to these cars that were powerful and aggressive and really youthful styling, mm-hmm. but also being rare. Yeah. And so the Cudas and Challengers were something I really appreciated early on, mm-hmm. simply for the rarity sake. And along with all the styling cues that were common for all the pony cars of the era, right? But and then it just refined itself and ultimately culminated into probably my favorite car of all time, which is the 71 Cuda, which seemed to just not have a single flaw to me. Like, it was just too much everywhere, but too much was just perfect. And just all the design features, everything. I thought, you know, I don't think I would ever own that car new because it was just too wild. But later on, I could certainly appreciate everything, and it was just like having a life-size Hot Wheels car. And so, you know, those cars, and then all of the others in the muscle car arena, that whether they were GMs or Fords or whatever, but that met that criteria of being powerful, you know, top dogs, expensive, but then also a real rarity factor. That's what I tended to gravitate towards as I started to get into my collecting phase of my life. So I had cars that I had just accumulated over the time. Nothing particularly valuable or rare, just sentimental.
Yeah.
When my business first started taking, I mean, I can't even say it was really taking off. I mean, I just started to have a little bit of money, spending money. You know, it's hard to go from zero to hero. You have to kind of build up. And you know, one of I really wanted one of each of a set of really rare cars. And I never really thought I would get into the ultra rare things like the convertible. I just thought, okay, Hemi Cuda, Hemi Challenger, if I can get that, or even a 6-pack of any of that. Really like the Torino Super Cobra jets. I really like those. Those are just not commonly seen. You know, of course you see the Mustangs and stuff. And there's some really rare versions of those as well. But the Torinos seem to be, you know, used and abused and thrown away, and so they were just hard to come by.
They're very unique.
Very unique, and I appreciated, you know, the styling of them, and so I just, you know, was scanning, and probably like everybody in the era, the late '90s, you know, I was just reading Hemmings, Motor News, and then I just opened every time I would go into our local newspaper, San Jose Mercury News, and I'd read the classifieds, and there it was, this car sold new in Los Gatos, our local town here, owned by the original owner still, 70 Torino Cobra, Super Cobra Jet drag pack car. I thought, what, are you kidding? I mean, here? And so I drove up. I mean, that was quite an adventure. These were remote people in the hills of Santa Cruz.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was. Esther, my wife, went with me, and of course, long, but I don't know, we weren't even married yet. Maybe just married, but they had this cyclone fence cage with cyclone. The fencing was 10 feet tall.
Wow.
And there was all these. I don't even know what they were, because it was just a mass of fur inside there, but there were wild dogs, and they were just pounding at the fences.
Oh no!
I don't know, there was probably 10 of them inside this.
Wow.
And I mean, this was really remote up in the hills, and the gentleman was very nice. He was actually the son of his dad was the original owner, and his dad had passed away, and he was also in poor health at that point. The son was. And so they were selling the car, but he had all his original paperwork, original information, and everything, and the car was, you know, very intact and original. And yeah, I bought it, and that was really my first collectible car, if you will. And I had others that were nice, but this was the first that I reached some point where I bought it specifically because it was rare and unique.
Yeah.
So that was really my first foray into the collector world, if you would.
Yeah, the car, I remember we met, back in 2000, mid-2007, I think, was when you and I first met at Ogle College. And I remember the first time coming up here, and of course at this point I knew you as the Hemi Cuda guy, and we come into the garage and we see this Torino, just, it seems so out of place, but hearing the story, it makes sense why you would start there. And then from there, the first 71 you got was the 446 pack car?
That's right. Yeah, so that was kind of after I digested the Torino, and you know, I really wanted a 71 Cuda, and I really wanted all the stuff on it. I wanted louvers and wing and billboard stripe and shaker and, you know, spoilers and rally wheels and rally dash, 4-speed. Who doesn't? I mean, why not?
Why not?
I mean, and of course, you know, there's got to be millions of them available because, you know, so then I started looking and I thought, well, there's not millions of them available. I mean, they made 108 of those cars 4-speeds. I think that's the right number. And the 6-pack cars. And yeah, they weren't as readily available as I thought. And again, it was at a higher price point, and I had to think like, am I really ready to spend this much on an old car? I don't know that you know, today's standards, it's fairly cheap, but at the time it was, you know, it was a lot of money. It was like $35K or something in that neighborhood.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it just seemed like, yeah, am I really making a good decision here? So anyway, that's about the budget I had. I actually, to be fair, I had some more money available, but we just had this small house and a small garage, and we were trying to consider like maybe we're going to, you know, buy a bigger place. So anyway, Hemmings Motor News was the go-to place at the time. I don't even think internet. Certainly not eBay and things, that wasn't available yet. I don't even remember if the internet was around in the late 90s at that time. But I read Hemmings Motor News, so I'm in California. This guy in Southern California had this 6-pack car. It was originally GB2, B2 blue, like ice blue metallic.
Beautiful.
But it had everything that I'd want. And so I drove down there, and I saw it, and I took it for a test drive, and I just fell in love with it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I have a very supportive wife, and she just gave me the full thumbs up, and yeah, we brought it home, and so that was my first. So by that time, I had my Challenger SE that I bought, you know, years before, which was just my first Challenger. But now I had my Torino and my Cuda. And it was kind of the start of, you know, my collection. And you know, while they're not the top dogs today, of course they hold a, you know, big part of my life.
Absolutely.
And I learned so much on that Cuda, you know, what the do's and the don'ts. It didn't come without some flaws. I had no idea at the time anybody would make and embellish a fender tag. I had no idea. I didn't know that was even a thing. So I was barely even learning how to read the codes on a fender tag, let alone to know that one was made with some embellishments. So anyway, fortunately I have some other half of a build sheet for that car. I just didn't recognize at the time the importance of, you know, strong documentation.
Right.
And so what I was able to learn at an early stage in my life, at a fairly cheap point in my collection phase, was what to be wary about, and that not only is a car that has all the visual appeal that you'd want and drives great and everything, but it needs to have sound bones underneath. And I was really appreciative of that car. Not that it was fraudulent in any way. It was just there were some things that were just missing on it, and that became, you know, a foundation for everything I looked for after that. That I had to make sure that I felt extremely comfortable that a car met all of the documentation criteria. Right. Even before I would consider it, it could not at this point now, it's starting to get too expensive where I just could not get overexcited by how a car looked or drove or made me feel. It had to also check all the boxes of being legitimate in every sense of the word. So it wasn't enough. At the time, there were several, one primary fellow, but several people that would go down and do inspections and experts, if you will, and then state like this car is or is not in their opinion. I recognize that, you know, opinions are based on whoever is giving the opinion, and if, you know, if the feel of that person changes over time, like maybe they lose credibility or they gain credibility, you're really, now you are invested in something that really has little else in documentation other than somebody's opinion. Yeah. So I needed to make sure that these cars were much more well documented than that. They could stand the test of time. And so I really took to heart that I needed to get fully accomplished at documentation, not just on the Mopars, but on all these cars, and also who to contact, and recognize that I couldn't just go out and buy stuff. I had to be able to speak to different authorities and get information about specific cars, because at that point I started to target specific cars that I would be going after rather than just something that came across a Hemmings book. Right. So anyway, so in some sense, you know, those early cars really helped me, and I really try my best to relay that information with people that ask me about entering the collector car phase, and I really emphasize strong documentation and getting third-party information and reviews of cars, or at least opinions. Not all the time. Sometimes you have to act quickly. It's kind of the nature of the beast sometimes, but you just have to be well versed in this and make good decisions. So I was fortunate enough to, whatever mistakes I made early in my life and was able to learn from them before it cost me too much.
All right, and now that concludes our first video in a series of many where we meet with Wade Ogle and go over his passion and his collection of cars. Stick around for future videos because it is going to be an amazing series of videos. These cars, as you've seen in this video, are truly historic and have some amazing stories behind them, and you're not going to want to miss out on my conversations with Wade about each and every one of them, because we are going to go over each and every one of those cars in future videos, including the next video, which is going to go over what he refers to as the trifecta, the E-body convertibles with the 426 Hemi. That's the 70 Hemi Cuda, 71 Hemi Cuda, and 70 Hemi Challenger. So you're not going to want to miss any of those videos. Again, thanks Wade to allowing me this opportunity to come into his home and check out these cars and share them with all of you, because it is just a true blessing, and these cars, like I said before, are truly historic and have amazing stories behind them. And I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did filming it. If you did, go ahead and smash that like button, give me that thumbs up. Helps us out tremendously with that YouTube algorithm. And of course, if you want to be kept up to date with all the future videos, especially these coming up with these stories on the Ogle collection, go ahead and smash that subscription button down below, as well as ring that notification bell, so that way YouTube will keep you up to date of all the videos I do in the future. And as always, guys, I will see you the next video.